If you need assistance with your credit, text CREDIT to 702-778-2000. The Credit Show podcast with Harry Jacobs starts now.
I want to talk about kids and credit. Now, your kids don't need credit, obviously, until they're 18 years old. But there's an issue, in my opinion, in this country, in that, with limited exception, there are no programs in school that teach our kids how to deal with credit. Yeah, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you're probably sick of hearing it, but, credit is your adult report card. I say it all the time. I'm starting to sound like my parents. Credit is your adult report card. It's true. But we don't find out how important it is often until it's too late. People learn the hard way so often. Maybe you hear someone say, well, it's important to have good credit. Well, why is it important? No one sits anyone down and says, hey, listen, this is why it's important to have good credit. It's important to have good credit because you want to get a good job. And here, I don't know where you're listening to the show or the podcast, but here in Nevada, there's a lot of background checks because people work with cash. People are in the gaming industry here. So credit is looked at. You may ask yourself, why is credit important if I'm in gaming? They want to make sure that you're not in a position financially where you would do something where ordinarily you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't take money that's not yours. That's important. So, no one sits you down and says, well, credit's important because you're going to need a good job. People don't always say, you're going to want to buy a car at the least amount of interest you can get charged, or buy a home at the lowest mortgage rate that you can get. There aren't those discussions that happen between parents and children very often. I'm not aware of a lot of them. I remember my father talking to me when I was a kid about, getting a bill and paying the bill, and, you don't want to be a deadbeat. You don't want to be a deadbeat, pay your bill. That was the extent of Dr. Jacobs' discussion with his son about credit. You want more information, you want to be detailed. I've talked, I don't know if I'll have time in this segment, but I talked about an exercise you can do with your kids to teach them about credit. You're the bank, they're the borrower. But there was a study done, I think back in 2018, from the Nonprofit Council of Economic Education, I think. Like 50% of the states require students to graduate from high school in this country having them take a finance education class. Only half of them. And how much time really is spent on credit? Credit Sesame in 15 did a study of parents with kids that were of college age. Staggering data came from that. Less than 60% of the parents ever spoke to their kids about credit. Credit is how we're graded as adults, for better or worse. It's as important as math and science and English and learning a trade. All those things are. That's my feeling about it. Maybe I'm biased because this is what I do. Your credit and how you deal with your financial affairs, to me, is as important as your job and what you do. There are things that go hand in hand. TransUnion put out some data some years ago as I was researching this topic today to talk about. And they said at that point when they did this in 18 or 19 that the highest rate of delinquencies of 90 days, the highest rate of them were people that were under 30 years old. Credit is difficult to understand for a lot of folks. I get that. It's an abstract concept. And because we don't teach our kids about credit, we don't teach them about it, they're more likely to default on a credit card, a department store, whatever it is, to default on whatever. When you miss a payment on your credit card, by the way, that stays on your credit, there's a notation, maybe that you get current, but there's a notation that goes on your credit that says current was 30 days late. But that negative item can stay on your credit for 7 years. Not just 7 years, by the way. It's 7 years plus 180 days if something is charged off. 7.5 years for a negative item if you let something charge off. Career Builder did a study. It said 75% of employers indicated that they would check a future employee's credit report. That's not even Nevada residents. That's just all over the country. Listen, your auto insurance, your car loan, your mortgage, where you live, you want to buy a water softener for the house and have that financed, whatever it is. All these things and so many more depend on how your credit report looks. The education of our children about credit is of critical importance. Next week, I'm going to give you an exercise on what you can do with your kids, if you've got little kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews, what you can do to help teach your kids about credit. You be the bank, the kid can be the borrower, the client, the customer. We can walk through it together.
You've been listening to the Credit Show podcast with Harry Jacobs. If you need assistance with your credit, text CREDIT to 702-778-2000.